Imagine a classroom where the toughest bullies think they rule until a new teacher walks in, and in just 60 seconds, flips their world upside down, leaving them pleading for mercy. This is a story of courage, cunning, and redemption that'll grip your heart and keep you reading until the very last word. If you love epic showdowns and jaw-dropping twists, hit that subscribe button now to join our community of story lovers across the USA and UK. Don't miss out on more tales that thrill and inspire. The air in Willow Creek High's room 204 was thick with defiance, the kind that clung to the walls like graffiti. It was the first day of the fall semester, and the students of Class 11B, notorious for chewing up teachers and spitting them out, lounged in their seats with smirks that screamed trouble. At the head of the pack was Ethan King Carver, a broad-shouldered junior with a rap sheet longer than the school's honor roll. His crew Lila, a sharp-tongued girl with a knack for manipulation, Marcus, a wiry kid who thrived on chaos, and Tara, whose icy stare could freeze a room, ruled the school through fear. They'd driven out 3 teachers in the past year alone, each one crumbling under their relentless pranks, taunts, and outright rebellion. The bell rang, but no one cared. They were waiting for their next victim. Enter Ms. Eleanor Kane, the new English teacher. She wasn't what they expected. At 32, she had a quiet confidence, her auburn hair tied back in a neat bun, her green eyes scanning the room like a general assessing a battlefield. She wore a simple navy blazer and skirt, but there was something about her unyielding that made Ethan's smirk falter for a split second. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge, like a blade wrapped in velvet. The class ignored her, continuing their chatter. Ethan tossed a paper plane at her desk. It landed squarely on her lesson plan. Without flinching, she picked it up, unfolded it, and read the crude insult scrawled inside. The room went silent, waiting for her to snap out. She didn't. Instead, she smiled a small, knowing curve of her lips and tucked the plane into her pocket. "Creative," she said, locking eyes with Ethan, "but if you're going to throw shade, at least make it clever." The class erupted in laughter, not at her, but at Ethan, whose face reddened. It was the first crack in his armor, and Eleanor saw it. She didn't know it yet, but this moment set the stage for a war that would shake the foundations of Willow Creek High. Eleanor wasn't just any teacher. She'd grown up in a rough neighborhood, dodging bullies of her own, learning to navigate danger with wit and grit. She'd earned her teaching degree while working nights as a bartender, dealing with drunks and dreamers who taught her how to read a room and defuse a fight. But Willow Creek was her toughest challenge yet. The school was a pressure cooker, underfunded and overspelled, with a principal who cared more about test scores than student welfare. Eleanor had been hired as a last resort, the only one willing to take on 11B. After the last teacher quit mid-lesson, sobbing, she knew the stakes: tame the class or become another casualty. The first week was a gauntlet. Ethan and his crew escalated their attacks. They hid her chalk, swapped her whiteboard markers for permanence, and whispered threats when her back was turned. Leela orchestrated a social media campaign, posting memes mocking Eleanor's outfits and accent, which had a faint trace of her working-class roots. Marcus rigged her chair to collapse, and Tara spread rumors that Eleanor was a fraud, with a fake degree. Each prank was a test, a dare to see if she'd break. But Eleanor didn't. She countered with unnerving calm, redirecting their energy into class discussions, turning their insults into debates about Shakespeare and Orwell. "You think I'm a fraud?" she asked Tara one day mid-lesson. "Prove it. Write an essay on truth versus perception, 5 pages. Due Friday." Tara scoffed but took the challenge. Her pride stung. Behind the scenes, Eleanor was strategizing. She spent nights studying her students' files, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Ethan, she discovered, was a foster kid, bounced between Holmes's anger a shield for pain. Lila's parents were absent, her bravado masking loneliness. Marcus craved attention, and Tara, the daughter of a disgraced politician, was desperate to prove she was untouchable. Eleanor saw their bullying as a cry for control in a world that gave them none. She wasn't naive. She knew sympathy alone wouldn't fix them, but she believed in second chances. She just needed a way in. By the end of the first month, the class was a battlefield of wills. Ethan's crew hadn't broken her, but they hadn't backed down either. Then came the incident that changed everything. During a lesson on the Crucible, Ethan stood up, ripped a page from the book, and lit it with a lighter he'd smuggled in. The class gasped as flames licked the paper. Eleanor didn't scream or call for help. She walked over, snatched the burning page, and dropped it into a metal trash can, all without breaking eye contact with Ethan. "You want to burn something?" she said, her voice low and steady. "Burn your excuses. Next time, I won't save you from the consequences." The room was silent. Ethan sat down, stunned. For the first time, he felt something new: respect. The burning page incident sent ripples through Willow Creek High. Word spread that Ms. Kane wasn't just surviving. 11B, she was fighting back. Students whispered about her in the halls, calling her the Iron Teacher. Ethan's crew, however, doubled down. They couldn't let her win. Ethan, still smarting from his public defeat, hatched a plan to humiliate her at the upcoming school talent show, a major event attended by the entire town. The plan was simple but brutal. They'd sabotage her performance, exposing her as weak. In front of everyone, Lila suggested rigging the stage lights to flicker during her act. Marcus proposed planting a fake love letter from her to a student to spark a scandal. And Tara wanted to hack the sound system to play embarrassing audio clips. They spent weeks plotting, their excitement fueled by the chance to reclaim their dominance. Eleanor, meanwhile, was preparing for the talent show herself. She'd signed up to perform a spoken word piece, a bold move for a teacher in a school where vulnerability was blood in the water. She chose a poem she'd written about resilience, drawing from her own life, growing up with an alcoholic father, escaping an abusive relationship in her 20s, and clawing her way to a better life. She practiced late into the night, her voice echoing in her small apartment, knowing the risk she was taking. If she faltered, 11B would eat her alive. The night of the talent show arrived, and the auditorium was packed. Parents, students, and local dignitaries filled the seats, the air buzzing with anticipation. Ethan's crew was ready. They'd bribed a tech crew kid to mess with the lights and slipped a fake letter into the principal's office, claiming Eleanor had written it to a student. The letter was a masterpiece of cruelty, filled with sappy confessions designed to make her a laughingstock. As Eleanor took the stage, the lights flickered, just as planned. The crowd murmured, but Eleanor didn't miss a beat. She stepped into the spotlight, her voice clear and commanding, reciting lines about rising from ashes and standing tall against storms. The audience was captivated, leaning forward, some wiping tears. Then came the twist. Mid-performance, the sound system blared with a distorted clip of Eleanor's voice, edited to sound like she was begging for a job. The crowd gasped, and Ethan's crew snickered from the back row. But Eleanor didn't flinch. She paused, smiled, and said, "Nice try, but you can't break what's already been forged in fire." Then, in a move no one saw coming, she pulled out the paper plane from her first day, the one with Ethan's insult, and held it up. "This was your first shot at me," she said, her voice carrying over the chaos. "You failed then, and you're failing now. Want to know why? Because I see you. All of you." She looked directly at Ethan, Leela, Marcus, and Tara. The crowd was silent, hanging on her words. She continued her poem, weaving in lines about forgiveness and strength, her voice growing stronger with each word. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Parents stood, students cheered, and even the principal, who'd found the fake letter but dismissed it as a prank, clapped vigorously. Ethan's crew sat stunned. Their plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of breaking her, they'd made her a hero. The next day, the principal called Ethan, Lila, Marcus, and Tara into his office. The fake letter had been traced back to them, thanks to a tip from a guilt-ridden tech crew kid. They faced suspension, maybe even expulsion. But Eleanor intervened. She asked for a private meeting with the four of them. No principal, no witnesses. The bullies expected a lecture, maybe a plea for them to change. Instead, Eleanor handed each of them a notebook. "Write your story," she said. "Not the lies you tell the world, but the truth you hide from yourselves. I'll read them, and I'll keep them private. But you need to face who you are before you can be anything else." Reluctantly, they agreed, sensing this was their last chance. The notebooks became a turning point. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan, Lila, Marcus, and Tara poured their lives onto the pages. Ethan wrote about his foster homes, the beatings he'd endured, and the fear that he'd never belong. Lila confessed her loneliness, how she used her sharp tongue to keep people at bay. Marcus admitted he acted out to feel seen, even if it meant being hated. Tara revealed the shame of her father's scandal, how she bullied others to feel powerful again. Eleanor read every word, her heart breaking and mending with each page. She saw their pain, but also their potential. She didn't coddle them, she pushed them harder, assigning them projects that forced them to confront their choices. In class, Eleanor shifted her approach. She introduced a unit on redemption in literature, using stories like Les Miserables, an atonement to spark discussions about guilt and forgiveness. Slowly, the bullies began to engage. Ethan, who'd never read a book cover to cover, devoured Les Miserables, seeing himself in Jean Valjean's struggle. Leela wrote a poem for class that stunned everyone with its raw honesty. Marcus, usually disruptive, started asking questions about second chances. Tara, the hardest nut to crack, began staying after class to talk about her writing, her icy facade melting. But not everyone was ready to forgive. Other students, victims of Ethan's crew, resented their transformation. A group led by Sophie, a quiet girl who'd been mercilessly teased by Lila, planned their own revenge. They spread rumors that Eleanor was playing favorites, protecting bullies because she was scared of them. The rumors reached the school board, and Eleanor faced an inquiry. She defended her methods, arguing that punishing kids without understanding them only deepened their wounds. The board gave her a warning, but let her continue, thanks to the principal's reluctant support. Then came the second twist. One night, Eleanor found an anonymous note slipped under her classroom door. "You're not the only one with secrets." It was typed untraceable, but the threat was clear. Someone knew about her past, her abusive ex, the restraining order, the years she'd spent rebuilding her life. She hadn't told anyone at Willow Creek, not even the principal. Panic crept in, but she pushed it down. She suspected Tara, who'd hacked the sound system before, but when confronted, Tara swore she was innocent. For the first time, Eleanor saw genuine fear in her eyes. The note wasn't from Tara, it was from Sophie, who'd dug into Eleanor's past out of spite, hacking school records and finding court documents online. Sophie wanted to expose Eleanor, believing it would ruin her and the bullies she seemed to favor. She leaked the documents to a local gossip blog, and by the next morning, the school was buzzing with whispers about Eleanor's scandalous history. Parents demanded her resignation, calling her unfit to teach. Ethan's crew, however, rallied to her defense. They knew what it was like to be judged for their pasts, and they weren't about to let Eleanor go down. The final showdown came at a school assembly, called to address the scandal. The auditorium was packed again, the air heavy with tension. Parents demanded answers. Students took sides, and the school board loomed like vultures. Eleanor took the stage, her heart pounding but her resolve ironclad. She didn't deny the rumors. Instead, she told her story, her abusive past, her fight to escape, her choice to become a teacher to help kids like her. "I'm not perfect," she said, her voice steady, "but neither are you. We all have scars. The question is, do we let them define us, or do we rise above them?" Then, in a move that shocked everyone, Ethan stood up. He walked to the stage, his usual swagger gone, and asked for the microphone. "Ms. Kane didn't give up on us," he said, his voice cracking. "Even when we tried to break her, she saw something in us we didn't see in ourselves. If you fire her, you're telling us we don't get second chances either." Lila, Marcus, and Tara joined him, each sharing a piece of their own stories, brief, raw, and honest. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause. Sophie, overcome with guilt, confessed to the leak, tearfully apologizing to Eleanor and the bullies she'd misjudged. The board backed down, and Eleanor kept her job. Ethan's crew became her allies, helping her create a peer mentorship program for troubled students. The program wasn't perfect, there were setbacks, relapses, and new challenges, but it gave kids like them a chance to rewrite their stories. Eleanor never found out who left the threatening note, but she didn't need to. She'd faced her past and won, just as she'd helped her students face theirs. In the end, Willow Creek High wasn't just a school anymore. It was a place where broken things could mend, where bullies could become heroes, and where a teacher's courage could change everything. And it all started with 60 seconds of defiance, when Eleanor Kane refused to break